Hello and welcome to this IBTV spotlight video on Battle of the CDMOs. We're not actually asking our CDMOs to battle each other. What we are doing instead is looking at different approaches and strategies to cell therapy manufacturing, CGT manufacturing, and kind of what that looks like in the context of commercialization. So before we get started, I'm going to ask John, would you please like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I am John Lee. I'm the global head of cell and gene therapy at SK Pharmteco.
Fabulous.
Yes, hi. I'm Evan Passanello with Resilience. I'm the head of commercial services and BD.
Tomaro-Duchesneau, Senior Director of Manufacturing and MS&T at Roslyn CT, the Boston site.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Now, to get started, with manufacturing capacity booming across a lot of the US and Europe at the moment, what specific advantages do CDMOs bring to the table for CGT developers, and how have these evolved when we start looking at the context of the industry spanning over, 20 years now?
Start with me?
Yes, please.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think what CDMOs are providing is an infrastructure for companies who don't necessarily have an infrastructure built out for GMP manufacturing. And even those who do, it offers a secondary or redundancy in supply. So you get the infrastructure piece, and then obviously scalability, and the type of supply chain. So they operate as a partner for you, right? And a big piece of that is, not just the capacity, but they're also evolving now to have program management. You've got supply chain solutions and regulatory support. So all of that becomes part of the package in a CDMO environment.
Do you have any more to add to the unique offering there, really, that CDMOs in this space can offer?
Yeah, I think I'd add to that a specialized skill set. CDMOs have a lot of experience, obviously, in the manufacturing space, the regulatory space, the compliance space, in the GMPs that product developers sometimes don't have in-house. So I think that's really important and really where we can partner from a CDMO side to guide a product through its life cycle all the way from early phase to commercial.
Yeah, and I would just add development capabilities,
Yeah.
right? Early stage all the way through commercial. We offer that for innovators, developers, companies that are, one person up to any number of people, including large pharma. So we can offer that extra advantage.
And what are the key challenges when a CGT developer is looking at selecting a CDMO or a manufacturing partner? What are the key challenges that they're facing, and how can CDMOs perhaps better address those pain points to make those decision processes easier? John, I don't know if you want to start us off again.
Sure. I mean, I think when you're looking at choosing a CDMO, there's a number of factors that must be considered. And actually, I was on a panel at ISCT last year where we put this together. We actually wrote a paper on this. So shameless plug. Cytotherapy, published in July 2024. But we identify a number of factors. Geography is very important. Do you need somebody to be close to you? And time zone differences, potentially even language differences if you're a supplier. So that's a big piece. What are the regulatory capabilities and overall compliance record of the CDMO? So two very important components. Analytical capabilities. IP considerations is another one, because how an MSA is drawn up with CDMO, who owns what IP is obviously very important. And then probably what I should have led with is technical expertise. What is it that you're actually bringing to the CDMO, and have they demonstrated a track record of success around whatever that might be?
Are there any other challenges that you're seeing or noticing, or that you're perhaps addressing?
I think it's just time to market, and to what John said, right? Time to market, and whoever has that technology and the ability to get there the quickest, especially if you have a commercial outlook for your program. Price is always a factor too.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's not always the cheapest, especially in the CDMO space, right? That all the things that John mentioned can lead to a great CDMO. And maybe these developers are willing to pay a little higher price or a better price for that kind of expertise that we bring to the table.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, we're seeing it with the excess capacity, right? I think a lot of the new CDMOs in the space trying to bring clients in that don't necessarily have that track record, that are willing to lower the price or make the timeline more compressed, and then actually like cost a lot more down the line, and the timeline is just not met. So there's a level of transparency, I think, that the field is fighting right now, and just trusting that the conversations up front during proposal and SOWs are actually transparent to the reality that they'll face down the line, rather than just committing to the timeline that the sponsor is asking for.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. The transparency I've found is key in these relationships, right? And it's always a challenge. We're getting constant feedback of, hey, we really appreciate that transparency. It starts at the
Mhm.
proposal,
Yep.
and then I mean, I think if it can continue on through project management, through the quality, through the price, I mean that's a huge win for developers when they find a CDMO that is that they feel they can trust and really build that relationship with.
And I'll echo that. We see it all the time. That I mean, this works at home too, right? 90% of your problems are due to bad communication.
Yep.
It's the same way in the CDMO innovator company relationship, and so having uh, demonstrated clear communication channels with the transparency of exchange, whether it's data or just communication, is just absolutely essential to to a prolonged relationship with a client or customer.
Yeah, I'd even add to the fact, like, being on the manufacturing side and having a manufacturing team, the folks that really understand the challenges in the process are those manufacturing operators,
Yeah,
right? And those are the people that are often not partner facing.
yeah.
So making sure that within the organization of the CDMO, there's communication and not silos within the organization that gets back to the product sponsor, and make sure that the process improvements are getting implemented as well.
Yep. Great point.
Staying with that idea of process improvement, and how are CDMOs, or how are, what's a strategy for CDMOs to keep ahead and to stay ahead in terms of technology, process development, and even things like regulatory knowledge in a fast evolving and changing CGT landscape?
Yeah. Sure, I'll take it. Much like the developers have a product pipeline, our CDMO space, we try and maintain like a innovation pipeline, right? How do we deliver to the customer faster? How do we, especially in the CGT space, right? How do you get test results quicker? How do you, make that turnaround time back to the patient that much faster? I mean, for an example, right? Resilience we call it a DAR-T process, right? And it's a 3-day turnaround on a process. So that's marketed information that we have out there. It doesn't fit everybody all the time, but it's something definitely to consider as you're looking at a CDMO.
Yeah, and I think the cross-platform knowledge too, right? The benefit of a CDMO is they've seen a lot of these processes. They've seen a lot of what goes wrong in processes, and working with some of the innovators and partnering with them, bringing beta units on site before they're trying to go GMP, and just really like having that in-house PD capability, and attending conferences like the one we're at, and interacting with the vendors and providing that live feedback, I think is key, not only to the CDMO and the partner, but just to the industry in general, as we're seeing an environment right now with a lot of competition between vendors for the same technology, and just making sure they're being supported as well.
Yeah, and I think just kind of adding on another layer here, at SK Farmteco, we have an internal R&D team that works closely with me on a strategy end, because we're in a rapidly evolving space. And what is in vogue today may not and probably will not be in vogue tomorrow. And so, we're constantly thinking about what we think our customers are going to need before they actually need it. Because when they do need it, we need to have it at the ready. And so, working with a CDMO that has an internal innovation engine, whatever that looks like, and I heard a couple different examples here, I think is a really smart move as you start to think about what you want to do with your CDMO, whether it be R&D or enabling technologies, thinking about, what's a novel resin that's going to increase your lentiviral yield, and things like that. So you should be having those conversations with your CDMO providers. And then I think you asked a question around regulatory, and I think there it dovetails nicely with what you said, is like being here, being at a meeting, and also I think being very active in industry groups like ARM, for example. Having being part of industry guidance teams is going to be very important because, as I said, this thing is constantly evolving, and those are the types of things that I'd be thinking about if I were shopping for a CDMO.
Yeah. And I would add, the people at the CDMO, especially in the cell and gene therapy space, are vital. I mean, I'm fairly new to the space with resilience, and I found that it's unlike a lot of other modalities. There's specific people in the industry that are well known for their knowledge, and they have a history in this industry. So sometimes that's something that I know customers are looking at of who's who at your facility. So that's important. We keep that in mind as well.
Yeah. I think we've raised quite a few times actually about this kind of customer-centric idea that everybody's thinking about their customers. We're trying to innovate for our customers. Everything comes back to the customer, and obviously that makes an awful lot of sense. But relationships, if we're thinking about customers' relationships, they are two-way operations. What factors should CGT developers prioritize when forming these meaningful and productive relationships with CDMOs? And what really are you all looking for in those partnerships in order to produce these productive and successful programs for your customers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's back to what we were talking about before a little bit, is the transparency, right? So there needs to be transparency between the partner and the CDMO, and it's bi-directional, right? I think understanding where the challenges are in a process from the partner before we even launch a tech transfer is critical, for example. I think too, just knowing that we're reachable, right? I think sometimes it's easy for the partner to be on site and be a PIP, but are they truly a PIP, or are they sitting in an office somewhere and getting third-party communication versus actually being inside and interacting with the operators and being able to guide? So I think looking for that as a product developer would be key in any sort of collaboration, because that's what drives the engagement, right? And I think engaging from both sides is really what we strive for.
Yeah, and I think a different way of saying what you just said, PIP means person in plant, I think historically, but the way that we look at it, and I think what you're trying to say, is partner in plants.
Correct.
Somebody who's actually actively engaged with the internal teams and being a true partner. And I think that, and I've seen this in past lives on the R&D side, having, we provide a service. We all provide service, but you can be treated like you're providing a service, or you can be treated like a partner. And that's essential when you're treated as an equal, if you will, in this relationship, as somebody who's also not just delivering the service, but also delivering expertise and value to that relationship. It goes a long way for I guess making meaningful contributions and really forging the relationship, which is where you started.
Yeah. Yeah, and that mutual benefit, 100% agree. And I think one of the things that comes to mind is, right, in the emerging technology space, right, there's a lot of developers out there trying to get funding. They're trying to conserve cash. I think that kind of drives these developers sometimes to say, well, we can't do it for exactly what the CDMO is asking for, or we need to cut scope, or cut corners. And in the end, I mean, that really hurts that mutual relationship, right? Because we lay out a scope of work that says, here's what we do for success. And then if that gets cut because of pricing and that kind of lack of mutual relationship, I think in the end, the developer is going to suffer, right? That program doesn't go as fast, or we run into more issues. So I think that's something to keep in mind with the pressures of financing in the marketplace today.
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, the CDMO landscape has gotten a bad reputation, right, with a lot of our partners. And I know at Roslyn, what we really strive for is that partnered focus, and that's from our very junior operator level all the way to our C-suite, right? And there's going to be delayed incoming patient material when you're working in the cell therapy space, and you might have some operators that are working a longer shift than they intended to when they came in the morning. But remembering the patient on the other side, and also remembering the partner that's trying to deliver these treatments to patients, it's really what we're doing, right? So it's unfortunate that the industry has taken kind of that view of CDMOs, because they're really critical in the supply chain pipeline to the patients.
And if we think about these relationships, there's never a one-size-fits-all. Partnerships look different for every partner, essentially, for want of a better word. But if you're looking at that, if you're approaching flexibility, and especially when you're looking at clinical stage production, how are CDMOs balancing that need for flexibility, but also with the capability for scalability, so many abilities in this sentence, required for commercialization?
Yeah, that's one that's, I mean, it's a constant battle, at least for us. I can tell you, where we start is flexible modular setups within our GMP facilities. Things where we can accommodate an early stage clinical customer, and then being able to convert that same space for a commercial customer. And right now, we've got a mix of everything there. So it is a very difficult thing. We try to really design the suites in such a way that we're able to switch things out as quickly as possible. And, that might just be, having a modular clean room in the sense that you might have an upstream suite and a downstream suite, and not necessarily have them together, because that gives you some added flexibility. And so, that's one aspect I think that we're probably all trying to grasp. And then I think the other one that comes to mind is just having platform technologies, which I'm sure my fellow panelists have, because a client can come in and say, I need to be in the clinic quickly, and how quickly can you get me there? And if you have a robust, scalable platform that they can plug into, not just for clinical, but then transform into commercial at larger scale, it's a big win. And I think that, most CDMOs are doing something to this end.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed with that. And also goes back to the earlier question about innovation, right? To make sure that you're keeping up with the times. So you're using the most modern equipment and, constantly reviewing your process. And then back to the technical knowledge of the staff, right? I mean, folks that have previous experience in a certain cell type will probably know that certain steps will work well in your platform or in our platform that we have. And then just, again, kind of historical experience in each step, right? There's the development, there's the early phase clinical, and the commercial. Again, in this emerging technology, emerging market, there's not a lot of commercial expertise out there for CGT. So if you find a CDMO with that, that's a great place, kind of a great place to start.
Yeah, I'd add to that a little bit with some overused terminology in the field, and that's phase appropriate. I'm really trying to start doing risk appropriate. Like, have you assessed the technical risk, the regulatory risk, the compliance risk, rather than just what phase you're in, because it's really going to depend on what program and what your process is. So really taking that risk-based approach, and that's really having proper risk management systems in place too, and understanding the program and the process and where we're going, I think is critical also, to be able to be flexible in the right places.
Yeah, phase appropriate seems like everything's the same.
Exactly.
And kind of looking at these different approaches, I think, I mean, we've mostly been in agreement. No one's disagreed with how we approach these things. But what are some of the key differences between approaches that CDMOs might operate within? And how should CGT developers go through that decision-making process to identify which business models might best suit their needs?
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, I just say do your homework, right? There's many different options out there, lots of different CDMOs that you can use, large scale international operations, more closer to home, small scale. It really what fits the developer's mindset for what they want to work with. And each one's going to have a different offering now. So as much as you can, right, it's important to do your homework and look for that transparency. I mean, I think it's, at least being in the business, is very easy to tell when somebody's kind of giving you, a load of, just not the truth.
Load of not the truth.
Yeah, a load of not the truth. Taking it easy. Try not to swear on camera.
Yeah. I mean, definitely ask to talk to people that aren't business development or sales people. Talk to the team that will be executing. And sometimes you get cornered in a room or on a call and it's just the business team. But I think digging a few layers down to understand what the organization can deliver on, and also watch that proposal and that SOW, right? Sometimes it's a cookie cutter template that the technical team on the CDMO side has not seen and might have different perspectives on. So really digging into that content and the pricing that's coming with it, and what the deliverables are with that pricing is also important.
Yeah, I think that's I head up some of the pricing end of things, and I think that there are unfortunately folks within the industry that are creating proposals that are intentionally underpriced to win
Yeah.
things. And my advice to customers who are seeing those is to really ask the right question, because you might be paying less upfront, but you're going to get changed order to death through some of these companies that are trying to be more competitive and potentially dishonest on the front end. So just adding on to that point, and I think what I'm hearing is ask the right questions, and what is it that you want as a customer? What are the things that are most important to you? Are you very price conscious? Are you more on the experiential side? And obviously it's going to be a combination of all of these things, but prioritize those things in such a way that you're really making the best decision for you. And the example I use all the time is flexibility, which I think is really important for most folks. I can tell you, when I was on the R&D side and I was the customer, that was something that was very important to me, was to have flexibility. If my portfolio changed or my pipeline changed, I need to be able to switch things out. Is that going to be a problem, or is it not going to be a problem? And having those conversations ahead of time really help prevent problems in the long run. And I'll close by saying, if price is important to you, see whether or not the CDMO is able to work with you on milestone-driven contracting, where you divide up what is a very large scope of work into smaller tranches, and you have those inflection points where you're paying out for success in line with what your funding situation might look like too. So there's a lot of things here that I think a lot of customers don't necessarily know exists within a good CDMO, but it's something that folks should be looking for.
Yeah. I feel like there's a moment of self-reflection that needs to happen from the partner before they choose a CDMO
Yeah.
to actually understand what they need, right? Is the process ready? And I mean, an honest self-reflection, not just oh, my timeline says it's ready to go,
Yeah.
but actually like reflect within their organization. Do they have an external manufacturing person that can even support the work at a CDMO?
Yep.
Because what we see from the CDMO side is sometimes the CDMO is ready to roll on the timeline, but the partner's support isn't staffed appropriately. So just making sure the resourcing questions are happening on both sides and not just on the CDMO side.
Yeah. Agree.
Goes back to what you opened with. It's
Yeah.
communication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Finally, so we will wrap up and bring this conversation to a close. But before we do, looking ahead to 2025 and beyond, obviously we're at Advanced Therapies Week and kicking off the year here in Dallas, but looking beyond, I suppose, to the next Advanced Therapies Week, what trends do we think will shape the CDMO landscape this year? And how should actually not just CGT developers, but also CDMOs be preparing for this?
I mean, in 2025, it comes down to funding, right? I've seen a lot of recent news lately that funding has been kind of tight the past few years. It's supposed to be opening up here in 2025. And then it's just innovation, right? New cell types, new ways of making, the programs go quicker, turnaround times, new testing technologies. I think it just goes back to that innovation, and a lot of it will stem from the CDMO.
Yeah, I think the innovation is definitely a piece, but I think also the standardization,
Yep.
right? Like when trying to establish how do you do a tech transfer? What is a training run? What is an edge run? When do the methods need to be validated? When is the qualification just okay? It's hard from a partner perspective to even understand what a CDMO is selling when they don't know what they need. And so I think it's almost like the CDMOs need to unite a little bit and kind of have the conversations that are, this is what we're going to do, right? And then change the theme of the CDMO landscape from the bad guys to people that can actually help.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. And I think we're going to see some of it's a trend. We're going to see consolidation, right? I mean, there's an oversupply of capacity, and certain companies are not going to make it. And frankly, the industry probably needs some of these companies to close down, just because bringing it together will help solidify and consolidate. And so that's definitely a trend we're going to see in 2025. We're already seeing it. I won't name any names, but recently we've seen a few occurrences of that already. And then I think, dovetailing on top of that, I think we've already heard a little bit around innovation. Automation is big here at ATW this week. I think I've seen at least a half a dozen different new platforms or evolving platforms where last year I said, well, they're not really ready for prime time. They're getting there. I don't think it's going to change overnight, but it is something that will continue to drive a lot of what we need to get towards standardization, and then digital being the last piece. If you're not investing in digital right now, you're going to fall behind from a CDMO perspective. Real-time data sharing, just cataloging all of this is going to be instrumental as this field advances, and I think that that's going to be an ongoing trend as well.
And the role of AI, which we could talk about for hours. Yeah,
The next
knows what's going to happen this year for that. Yeah.
Fabulous. Well, thank you all for joining me. That's all my questions. And yes, thank you very much. It's been really good fun.
welcome.